things happening. You can turn your Bibles to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. I think I was telling my wife too when I was going over this. I was like, I think I've never been, like, it's been a while since I had a message that I'm just fired up about. And I'm really excited to preach, because maybe it's just because I was off last week and I didn't get to preach last Sunday, so I'm probably just itching to get back up here to preach. But it was good. Me and my wife, we had went to New York, and it was a lot of fun. And we spent our 5-year wedding anniversary there, so it was a cool time. And so, anyways, let's jump into week 3 of conversations. Man, I hope you've been enjoying the series. Have you been getting something from the series? Well, let me hear you. If you're like, hey, this is helping my prayer life, that's awesome. Because you know what we've been learning how to do? We've been learning how to have more effective conversations with Jesus. That's why we titled this scripture, this passage, Conversations, this whole series, Conversations. And you see, in week 1, we learned how to give our prayer life some what? Some structure. There you go. We learned how to give our prayer life structure. And many people just aren't confident praying, and so we learned how to pray by giving our prayer life some structure, some easy, that it doesn't have to be like, remember Peggy Sue, that's just calling down heaven and it intimidates you, but you can pray simple. You can pray, God, I love you, I trust you, I worship you, thank you for what you're doing in my life, I need you to do this. It can be as simple as that. God hears your prayers. But it's just like any marriage, right? In a marriage, you have to have communication in order to have a healthy relationship. It's the same way with Jesus. You have to have conversations with Jesus in order to have a healthy relationship with him. And last week, Pastor Todd came in and preached the house down. I thought he did an incredible job for us last week on the week I was off, and he talked about how to stay persistent in prayer, right? That don't stop praying. Many of us, we get discouraged when we don't see God answer that prayer right away, and we stop. But we don't stop on 6, man. You got to keep going. You got to keep grinding, because God is hearing your prayer, and he's going to answer that prayer in due time, in his timing, according to his will. And with 2 weeks left, I wanted to dig a little deeper into this subject of prayer, and it's going to come from King Jehoshaphat. Can you say that again? Jehoshaphat. King Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. I'm going to read from verses 1 to 4, but it's a story that goes from verses 1 to 30, and we're going to be kind of picking through some of it. But it says this: after this, the Moabites and the Ammonites, and some of them the Minites, came against Jehoshaphat for battle. Some men came and told Jehoshaphat, a great multitude is coming against you from Edom, from beyond the sea, and behold, they're in Hazon Tamar, which is En Gedi. Would you imagine being told that 3 different armies are coming against you, that are really big, and they're about to come wipe you out into extinction? Yeah, that's what he was just told. I would not like to be told that. It says, then Jehoshaphat was afraid, naturally, and he set his face to seek the Lord, and he proclaimed the fast throughout all of Judah, and Judah assembled to seek help from the Lord from all the cities of Judah. They came to seek the Lord. If you're taking notes, which I hope that you are, you can title this message, Confidence in the Crisis. Confidence in the Crisis. You ever had a crisis in your life and you had the opposite of confidence? Have you ever had a time in your life, a situation in your life where something happened and it was just like, I don't know what's going on right now. Maybe it was a marriage issue that just went into crisis. Maybe it was a health issue that went into crisis. Maybe it was a family issue, because how many of you know we all have dysfunctional families, and it was a family issue, and it went into crisis mode. And many times in that crisis, it's so easy to have the opposite of confidence, to have be more doubt, or be more fearful than anything, right? And so confidence in the crisis is what I want to talk about today, because I think we can walk out of here with our faith and power, knowing that even in our weakest moments, we can have confidence that God's working on our behalf through prayer. You see, many of you don't know this story, and I've been waiting for the right time to tell the story about a church, because obviously when I was preparing for this message, and I was thinking about it, I was trying to say, what crisis has happened? Because I've had a lot of crises happen in my life. I think we could all say that, right? What crisis would be the most relatable for this? And we had something happen. In August 2016 is when Church on a Mission launched, right? When our church started. That's why in 2 weeks we're celebrating our 2-year anniversary with a Big Vision Sunday. And It's going to be great. But 4 months, so August 2016, we started our church, and you know what I was told? I was always told that you needed to, when you were starting a church, you needed to have some money in the savings account. It's like starting a business so that you could grow, because you're not going to be able to reach your budget right off the bat. You're going to need, it's going to have to grow a little bit. People tithing together to make your budget. So we put $15,000 into the savings account, and that's what we're going to go with. So Launch Sunday is coming, and the weekend before Launch Sunday, guess what happened? The Great Flood of 2016. We had all this buzz going for us. We were expecting over 100 people, and then the Great Flood happened. And so it kind of like really hurt our momentum going forward. And so on launch day, we were still really excited. We had like 52 people, but a lot of them were friends and family. So the week after that, we had 20 people. You know, it cut down, and we started from what started, and really it was, I think, 14 of us or 12 of us that started the church. So there was a few it was the core team and a few other people. And so our expectation of seeing over 100 people went down to 15 or so people, and we were like, now we've got to make sure that 15,000 can last us, because obviously we got to pay for the Ponce Train Center, we got to pay for the event insurance, we got to pay for the other bills. And guys, can I tell you, over the next 4 months, we saw that savings account just start doing this. Every week, losing money, every week losing money. And I got to share something, because this is this thing. I grew up, and when I was 19, I got this call that God told me to plant a church in a metropolitan area in Metro New Orleans, call it church. Even at 19, I got the idea to call it Church on a Mission. And so here I am, stepping into my purpose, man, stepping into the dream, stepping into the call. I'm like, this is going to be great. This is going to be amazing. And 4 months in, I thought we were going to have to close our doors. I'm supposed to be in the dream. Have you ever felt that? I'm supposed to be in the dream. What's going on right now? I'm supposed to be in my purpose. Is it really supposed to be this hard? God, are you really about to shut the doors after 5 months of us being in? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. You ever been there? Don't understand what's kind of going on. And the truth is, man, we all face crises. Some of us daily, some of us weekly. And we're always facing these crises where we feel weak. We have that sickness that's holding us down. We have that financial that breakdown or that marriage breakdown. It's these crises that are happening all over the place, and we just don't know what to do. And King Jehoshaphat, man, we can learn a lot from him today, because he was in this moment where he could have broke down. He was in crisis. He was in crisis because he just got told that 3 armies were coming to wipe him out. Extinction. It was going to happen. But I want to show you some things, because how it relates to the story with the story I just told you, I'm going to be sharing bits and pieces of it throughout the sermon, and how this relates, it's incredible. Check this out in verse 1. Can you bring verse 1 back up for me? Over there, it says, after this, the Moabites and Ammonites, and with them some of the Midianites, came against Jehoshaphat for battle. Right? So there's this crisis. It's coming. But I want you to pay attention to something. I want you to pay attention to this. What is this? After this. After this. After what? After what? See, the chapter before King Jehoshaphat, he realized that the assembly of Judah, they were serving other gods, they were idolatrous, things weren't happening, they weren't focused on Jesus. And so he calls a big reformation. He gets everybody together and he says, hey, it's time for us to turn our eyes back to Jesus. Right? It's time for us to do that, because we need to get our eyes back focused. All this other stuff that's holding us back from our purpose. Let's get our eyes focused. So he's bringing reformation. I think it's so funny, and at the same time not funny, that as soon as he says, let's get our eyes focused on Jesus, that crisis comes. Isn't that interesting? I had to bring this point up because I know in our congregation we have a few people who are just stepping into the life of faith, just starting to believe in Jesus, or maybe if you've been believing for a while. You see, this is the thing. We think that sometimes a life with Jesus means no crisis, but that's not it. When you start following Jesus, you're still going to have what they call life. Life still happens. Following Jesus doesn't make you void and absent of all the problems that are going to come. You're still going to have problems. You're still going to have things. Even with him, let's get our eyes focused on Jesus, and then bam, he's got 3 armies coming against him to wipe him out. Sometimes it's like when you're following Jesus, it's like you have more of a target on your back, because the devil doesn't want you to reach the potential that God put inside of him. And so here we are. We have Jehoshaphat, who's trying to get everybody back together, and I've seen it so much, man. I've seen people start to follow God, and the minute something bad happens, it's like, I thought God was going to protect me from this. And they lose faith. They lose faith instead of trusting a God who's on your side. Matter of fact, Jesus was talking with his disciples one day. You know what he told them? In John, you can go read it. He looked at him and said, look, in this world, he told them, he was straight up with them, in this world, you're going to face some trials in your life. Guess what? You're going to face some crisis. But he said, but I need you to take heart because I've already overcome the world. You see, the problems that you have, they're bigger, but you serve a bigger God. Yeah. He's a bigger God that cares about your problems. He cares about who you are. He wants to see you succeed. But so many times we lose faith because bad things are happening to us. If anything, that should make your faith get more empowered because you know the devil's trying to stop you from moving forward, and you got to move forward. I just came to preach today. I'm fired up about this. I just got you to wake up a little bit. Jehoshaphat was there. And he has this battle coming. 3 armies coming against him. And look at the next verse. Go to verse 2 for me. He says, a great multitude, they're coming against you from Edom, and from beyond the sea, and behold, from all these weird names. And Jehoshaphat, it says, he was afraid. I think that's everyone's natural instinct, right? When a crisis happens. I mean, it's to be afraid. I just know that's what happens to us. It's so easy to get fearful whenever a crisis is happening in our life, but this is where it's the key, because many of us, we get afraid, and you know what our first response is? Self-sufficiency. I've got to handle this myself. I've got to get myself out of this. It's the pride in us that's already naturally in us says, I've got this, I've got to take it by the rope, and I've got to move forward. Like, I've got to do it, and you feel like nobody's on your side, and everybody's, I've got to take care of this. I've got to do that. You know, King Jehoshaphat could have did that. He easily could have done that. I mean, if you're looking at King Jehoshaphat, and he, in a couple chapters before, go to the next part, 2 Chronicles chapter 17, look at this. It says, and Jehoshaphat, this is before the battles were coming, grew steadily greater. He built in Judah fortresses, he had store cities, and he had some large supplies in the cities of Judah. He had soldiers, mighty men of valor in Jerusalem. If you keep on reading down, he had somewhere among the ranks of 1 million soldiers ready to fight at his command. So he could have easily heard the news and said, I got all these armies coming against me right now. And instead he could have been like, all right, I need people at the fortress. I need people in the command spot. I need this army here. I need the front line there. He could have strategized it all. He could have started putting pen to paper. He could have started coming out with an attack to try to save his people. And that's what we do. When the crisis comes, a lot of us get the pen to paper. How can I make this work? How can I make this happen to where it's just, I can get out of this? It's a me thing. The pride comes out of us, and we start strategizing some way to make the miracle. See, that's what happens. So we strategize for the miracle when we should let God work the miracle. And our first response is always to try to do it ourselves, and we find ourselves just fighting and fighting and fighting. And some of you are fighting that same crisis that you've been fighting for years because you just keep trying to fight it by yourself. Simply what happens, King Jehoshaphat, he could have easily done that, but guess what? He didn't. I think that's why we can learn so much from King Jehoshaphat today, because he didn't do that. You see, remember, he was reforming everyone to turn their eyes on Jesus. That's what he was doing. He was doing that, and in verse 3, you're going to see him. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 20. It says, Jehoshaphat was afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Can I tell someone in here, God maybe told me to tell someone in here today, it's okay to be afraid of your circumstance. It's okay to be fearful where you're at right now. Yeah. What you do with that fear determines your next step. Yeah. And I think in King Jehoshaphat, he shows us something. He says, look, he was afraid, and he set his face to seek the Lord, and he proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah. And Judah assembled to seek help from the Lord, and from all the cities of Judah that they came to seek God. See, I believe Jehoshaphat gave us the right priority right here. He learned to have the first response, to pray first. If there's anything that I want you to get from today is you've learned how to give your prayer life structure. You've learned how to stay persistent in prayer. But today I want you to walk out of here not letting prayer be your last resort and instead being your first response in any situation. Having God fighting on your side. He prayed first. But I want you to notice that he didn't just pray first and start asking God for help. See, it says that he was afraid, so he seeked the Lord. He didn't go, God, I need you right off the bat. Because many of us, I've used this example before, but many of us, we use God like a credit card. We take it out, and when we need it, we swipe it. God, I need you right now. Like the only time you pray is when you need something from God. And so we use him, And it's a lot of people, that's what we're having. And our relationship with God should not be one way, it should be reciprocal. And so here we have Jehoshaphat who's seeking the Lord. He's not asking God for help yet. He's going to ask God for help, but he seeks the Lord. You know what it means to seek the Lord? That little phrase right there. It means to get into the presence of God. It means to go into the presence of God undistracted because his presence changes things. It means to get in somewhere, it's like a church on Sundays. You might be going through something, but guess what? To get amongst people who are all corporately worshiping God, it does something. You see, your worship begins to break your chains. You begin to see that things are happening in your life, but when I get here and I get in God's presence, there's this sense of peace, there's this sense of love, there's this sense of joy for a moment. For a moment, I can forget about what's going on because God's working in my right now. Yeah. That's where he can give you the faith to keep moving forward, and that's what's happened. So seeking the Lord is getting into God's presence. That's what Jehoshaphat did first. He didn't go straight to God asking for help. He just went and got in God's presence. He just went and got it. And some of it, that's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, look at this verse. He was saying, but when you pray, he's not telling you have to do this every time. See, there was some stuff happening in Matthew 6, 1 through 5, that caused him where he was like, there's a lot of drama going on in your life, and what I need you to do, when you pray, just go in your room and shut the door. Some of you need to dismiss the drama out of your life so you can get into an undistracted environment where you can pray, where you can experience God's presence. And that's what he's saying, get out of it. Get out the drama, pray to your Father who's in secret, and the Father who sees you, hey, he's going to work on your behalf. You're going to see him moving in you. When we get in God's presence, man, we begin to follow Jehoshaphat's example of how he's praying first. And I believe that your fear, what you feel right now, it'll begin to turn into confidence in the crisis. Confidence is happening right there. Psalm 34:10 says it like this. The lions, they're going to grow weak. They're going to grow hungry. But those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Lack no good thing. Man, when you're seeking God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, you lack no good thing. Don't let the devil tell you that you're lacking because you ain't. You have the God, Almighty God, who created the heaven and earth, who is on your side fighting with you. I don't know what you say, but he's on the winning team. He's never lost, and I want to be on that team. Amen? That's what's happened, man. Seek the Lord right there. And so Jehoshaphat did that. You see, he realized that he could do some things after he prayed. After he had prayed, but he could do nothing worthwhile before he prayed. See, prayer was his strongest weapon, and I hope today that we learn that in the crisis, we learn that prayer should not be a last resort. It should be a first response. When we're in crisis, that'll begin to bring some fear. I mean, it's just like I've heard people sometimes, their marriage starts falling apart, and the first thing they do is they try to go run to a counselor. Hey, that's a good idea. I think sometimes you need to take that. Well, have you ever just sat back and tried praying together? Getting your foundation on God. I'm going to tell you something. 4 months ago, I always used to come over here and be like, in the early life of our church, you couples should pray together. Every night you should pray together. And I never really did that, and I started getting convicted. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start that. 4 months ago, me and my wife, we started praying together every night. Now it's a habit to us. We don't go to bed before we pray. And I could tell what it's done in 4 months. God has changed things. Like, it's dismissed the little drama in our life. It's, we've seen ourselves grow closer to one another. We've seen the little arguments and bickerments we used to have. They don't exist. Like, it's just weird how it's just started happening. Yeah, we still argue. Yeah, we still have things where we're going. But it's like God's with us. You can feel it because we've set a foundation on him by praying every night. Man, men in the house. Man, that's your responsibility. Your responsibility when you go to bed. I'm sure you kiss your wife before you go to bed every night. Why don't you, before you kiss her, you grab her hand and you say a quick prayer? Protection over your family. Or your kids. I can't wait to have kids, guys. I've got baby fever like crazy right now. I can't wait to go kiss my kid and tell them, and pray with them every night before they go to bed. It does something, man. And look, when you start praying, then go to the counselor. But don't go to the counselor and exclude prayer out of your life. Or the same thing like health and sickness. We go to doctor. And I believe God, and you never pray. I'm not saying just pray and not go to the doctor. No, I believe God uses doctors. But maybe if you would pray first, God would guide you to the right doctor who's going to find out what your diagnosis is, and you're going to see a healing in your life. See, it's pray first before anything else. Pray first. You see, you have Jehoshaphat, who's now He's afraid, but he's going to pray first. He's going to seek. And so what he does is he gets everybody together. He gets in God's presence. They fast a little while, and then he's going to start seeking God for help. And he gets everybody, all the congregation together, and he says this prayer. It's verses, I believe it's verses 5 through 12. You can go read it. I'm only going to read the last part that he says because it's very significant. In 2 Chronicles 20:12, look what he says. He ends his prayer. Look, and he says, "For we are powerless against this great horde that is coming against us. And we don't know what to do, God. But man, God, our eyes, it's on you right now."
Yeah.
Our eyes, it's on you. I love when I read, leave this passage up for me. I love this passage when I read it because, kings back in this time, they had to have this sense of pride with them. They had to have this sense of like, I'm the man of the house. I'm the fearless leader. People are looking to you for direction. They couldn't show any sign of weakness. If they showed sign of weakness, they might die. Someone would kill them, take their place and stuff. So for King Jehoshaphat to step back in front of everyone and say that word right there, powerless. Powerless. That was confirmation showing King Jehoshaphat lowering his pride and saying, I can't do this. I need God to work this. And some of you, the most liberating moment in your crisis right now is when you realize that you're powerless. When you say, I'm powerless against what's going on right now. Because guess what? You've been fighting that same battle for years, and you haven't won yet. And if you haven't won yet, you've got to, at some point, start feeling pretty powerless. Maybe that addiction from that alcohol hasn't gone away in years. You know why? Because you're trying to battle it on your own. You got to realize you're powerless. You need a God who's all-consuming, who knows your plan, who wants to help you get out of that problem. I'm powerless. That's what King Jehoshaphat says. I'm powerless, and he lowered his pride. He lowered his pride, and he began to pray first. He began to pray first in the crisis, and he says this word. Look, he even says it again. God, I don't know what to do right now, but my eyes are on you. I have no idea what I'm going to do right now, but God, my eyes, they're on you. Can I tell you what praying first does? Praying first sets your focus on God. Praying first, instead of looking at the winds and the waves that are crashing over your life right now in the storm, praying first puts your focus on God and what he does. You see, we were 4 months into our church launch, and I was just, all I could do was look at the numbers, guys. Look at the numbers, watching them go down and down and down. Knowing that we weren't going to make it much longer. Knowing that we couldn't afford where we were at, we couldn't afford some of the bills we were paying, and I didn't know what we were going to do. And so I remember trying to figure it out. Guys, I did it myself. I was pulling, you can ask my wife, I was pulling out paper, and I was putting pen to paper, trying to figure out what can we cut, what can we get rid of, how can we make it. And there was little things that we might have been paying for. I was trying to figure out 4 months in. And one thing we've always done since the beginning of our church, since week 1, is everything that comes in, we cut the first 10% and we give. Just like God commands people to give, we do it as a church. We give 10% back to our community. And we do like different outreaches. You can talk to me after. I can tell you which ones that we support and stuff. But we support different, like 5 different ministries in and around our country or in and around our area. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, you know what? That's a lot of money right now, 10% given. So I think if I cut this was 4 months into our launch, if I cut this, then maybe to save us a few $100s, I could do that. So I started typing this message up. I was sitting at work, and I was hurt. My heart was hurting so bad because I love to give so much, and I was hating to have to. I was messaging them, hey, I'm so sorry. Donna Engel from the sex trafficking ministry. I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to cut off our support for now because we don't know if we're gonna make it. And maybe, hopefully soon, we'll be able to pick back up. I wrote all these out on emails. I didn't send it to them. I wrote them all out. And in that instance, when I finally sat back and I started to kind of tear up, I was at work. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I felt conviction, almost. Because, see, God will help you set your eyes back on Him. You'll feel something deep down that you know something's not right. And I could feel it in my deep in my soul, and I could feel what was going on. And I was like, something's not right. And I said, you know what? I haven't even prayed about this. 4, 5 months I've been digging at this problem, and I have not once prayed. And I sat down in that chair, and I just started praying, God, I need you to do something. Lord, I know this is what you called us to do. I know this is where you want us. And you know what I did right after that? I highlighted all of that text. I said, God, in faith, you're going to take care of this, and I believe it. In faith, you see, what happened in that very moment, was that, you see, praying first helped me stop focusing on the numbers and start focusing on God. And even though I was still battling the issue, I had this sense of peace that it was going to be okay. I had this sense of joy and confidence in the crisis that we were going to get through it. Because I knew that if God called you to it, He's going to give you the grace to get through it. So I stepped back and I started doing that. King Jehoshaphat, man, he sets everybody's eyes on Jesus. He gets them right there and he says, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes, it's on you. It's on you. I don't know what to do, but it's on you. And then guess what? The God of miracles who turns prayer requests into praise reports, He goes to work on their behalf. Look at 2 Chronicles 20, verses 13 through 17. It says, meanwhile, all Judah stood before the Lord with their little ones, their wives, and their children. This is right after the prayer. Go to the next verse. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jehaziel, the son of Zechariah, son of Benaiah, son of Jael, son of Mattaniah, and Levi, the sons of Asaph, in the midst of the assembly. And he said, listen, all Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem and King Jehoshaphat, thus says the Lord your God, don't be afraid. Some of you, if you would pray first, you would hear God say that to your soul. Do not be afraid and do not be dismayed at this great war, for the battle, it's not yours, but it's God's. Tomorrow, I want you to go down against them. Behold, they will come up by the ascent of Ziz. You will find them at the end of the valley, east of the wilderness of Jeruel. You will not need to fight in this battle. Stand firm, hold your position, and see the salvation of the Lord on your behalf. O Judah and Jerusalem, do not open a little fast on me. You will not need to fight this battle. Stand firm. Do not be afraid and do not be dismayed. Tomorrow, go against them, and the Lord will be with you. And I read that, and I was just getting fired up just reading this part. Because, you see, they prayed first, it set their focus on God, and then they got confirmation that God was working with them. And when I read this, I started wondering, how many of us keep fighting battles that weren't even meant for us to fight in the first place? How many of you are exhausting resources and exhausting yourself fighting a battle that was never meant for you to fight? It was always meant for God to fight and God to fight only. I love when I read that because the miracle worker, he's going to work. He says, look, in verse 15, he said, I don't know what, you don't need to be afraid. Do not be dismayed at this great war. Because when you go over there against them, and you come on them on the Ziz, you will find them at the end of the valley, and you're not even going to have to fight in this battle. All I need you to do is stand firm in your faith. Pray first, set your focus on God, and watch the miracle worker go to work. And that's exactly what happens in 2 Chronicles 20, 24 through 25. It says, when Judah came to the watchtower of the wilderness, they looked toward the horde, and behold, there were dead bodies lying on the ground. None had escaped. When Jehoshaphat and his people came to take their spoil, they found among them in great numbers goods, clothing, and precious things which they took for themselves until they carried no more. There were 3 days in taking the spoil. It was so much. So I want to set this up, what just happened. We just read a couple of things. They were told that God was about to take them to prepare the battle. They ain't got to worry about fighting. So King Jehoshaphat gets some of his generals and they start walking up. They get to the watchtower where they're looking into the wilderness. When they looked into the wilderness, the 3 armies that were coming, they all turned against each other, started fighting, literally until everyone was dead. King Jehoshaphat and his army didn't even have to raise a sword to fight. It was already taken care of. See, the battle that you may be facing right now, it's not yours. It's God's. And God can give you the faith if you would pray first and set your focus on Him to believe it and have confidence in the crisis. To know that He's going to take care of that. And you know what? I was reading this and I had some revelation. And I saw something in this and I was like, wow, wow, wow. See, because pull up verse 24 for me. In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 24. It says, when Judah came to the watchtower of the wilderness. You see this term wilderness right here? I did a series on that last year. But this term wilderness, what it means in the Bible, what it symbolizes in the Bible is this dry, this barren, this desert area in your life where you see no end, where you're just discouraged, where you feel like you have no purpose, where depressed. If you ever had that moment in your life, that's when you're in a wilderness season in your life. And it was crazy to me. It says when Judah came to the watchtower of the wilderness. So they're standing at the watchtower and they're looking into the wilderness. Now, I want you to follow me, okay? There are times in your life where God will send you into a wilderness. You can see that in the Bible. God will send you into a wilderness because He needs you to learn some things. And the things that He's going to teach you in the wilderness is going to help you in the next season so you can fight the next battle in your life. Okay? But there are also times in your life where you put your own self in a wilderness. Let's think about King Jehoshaphat. If he would have not prayed first, and he would have taken himself into that battle, where would he be at that time? In the wilderness. Fighting a battle that he was never meant to fight. And the mass destruction that would have caused their whole community would have been horrible. But guess what? He didn't do that. Instead, he prayed first, and he was looking into the wilderness from the watchtower. And God told me to tell someone in here today that you're fighting in a wilderness you should have never been in. That you can take the time right now to pray first, because God needs you to be in the watchtower, not in the wilderness. No. That you know that you serve a God right now, that you do not have to be fighting in that wilderness that you're in right now. Many of you have gotten yourself in that way, and God says, get out of the wilderness and get into the watchtower. The watchtower is where I want you. You know why I want you in the watchtower? Because when you're in the watchtower, you're going to see a miracle God go to work in the wilderness for your life and on your behalf. And that pumps me up. Man, there's something just special about that. About what he did. Because after they watched God work in the wilderness, it says it took them 3 days to pick up all the spoil, the loot from them. All the food and stuff that they had. 3 days, they got all this blessing. And that's the crazy thing, is that you don't even have to be fighting in a battle. And when you don't even fight and he goes and answers it for you, guess what? You get the blessing. How awesome is God? How awesome does he work? You see, I highlighted that whole passage and I pressed delete. And we were, during that time, 4 months into our church, I was doing a series on breakthrough. You know, you need a breakthrough in your life. And guys, I was writing. Usually I'm not done with my sermon until Friday. I was done with that sermon on Wednesday because I was pumped up about it. I was pumped about this topic of breakthrough. And I used this story in 1 Kings chapter 4 about how I kind of told you something last week if you were here, about how Elijah sent the servant up the mountain 7 times, and on the 7th time he saw the cloud, and it was breakthrough because there had been a drought and stuff. And so I wrote a sermon based on that story, and I titled the sermon, There is a Cloud. Right? Titled that sermon, There is a Cloud. On Wednesday. On Thursday, my favorite worship team, called Elevation Worship, released a new album. You know what the name of that album was called? There is a Cloud. I was like, oh my goodness, they literally just released that the day after. I'm not even lying to you. So I go to the song that was There is a Cloud, and I played it. And when I began to hear the lyrics, I could tell they pulled it from the same passage that I was preaching from. And I was like, and I just started weeping, guys. I was like, oh my Lord, it was hitting me right. I'm in my house, I'm praying, and I'm like, what is going on? And it's just these simple lyrics, so you can sing it. It's, we receive your rain. We receive your rain. There's another part. What he's saying is we receive your rain. Like your rain in the Bible. Rain in the Bible means God's presence, God's Spirit. God, I receive your presence. I receive your Spirit in the midst of my circumstance right now. God, I receive it. And I was singing that, and there's even a part in it where, it says, you know, God, I know I'm anticipating for you to work in the promise that you've already done. Like, just giving you a lot of hope. And I was praying, and I was thinking it. And next Sunday comes, right? It's time to preach the message. I can tell you guys, to be honest with you, sometimes when I preach, it's for me more than it is for anybody else. Yes. And I got up there to preach that day, and so much healing happened to my heart. And I felt like it was just me on stage. And I was praying, I was preaching. And, sorry, this is probably one of the coolest stories that I've ever had in my life in general. And so, anyways, I preached my heart out, guys. And I walked off the stage that day, just feeling good, feeling confident. I got the tithe report in. It was the lowest we had ever had in the entire history of our church. My bookkeeper calls me. I'm still full of faith. I've seen it. I'm still full of faith. She says, once all the checks cleared about a week or two, we're going to have negative 900 in our account. And she's like, what do you want to do? I said, you know what I want to do? I'm going to sink every last thing in this because I know this is where God called me to. She said, okay, let's keep praying. I hung up the phone and I said, God, I know you're going to take this. That's my guess. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. There's a guy that I used to know from a long time ago, all the way in Chicago. He's a general manager for a car dealership. He calls me, he says, yo, Ryan, what's up, man? I haven't talked to you in forever. And I was like, dude, what's happening? You know, it's awesome. It's good to hear your voice. He's like, how's your church doing, man? How's the church? The church is great. The church is great, man. We're 4 months old. You know, we've grown a little bit. God's doing some cool things. He goes, awesome. How's your finances? Oh, our finances are great. You know, we're doing so. I'm lying through my teeth. You know, you're so great. You're so good. And he says, Ryan, how's your finances? I started to kind of tear up. I was like, bro, to be honest, our checks are about to clear. Once they do, we're going to have negative 900 in our account. I don't know what to do. He said, all right, I'm sending you $1,000 right now so that don't happen. At this time, I start to kind of cry a little bit. And he said, bro, he said, since we moved to Chicago, we haven't found a church home. And I've been watching your sermons every Monday, because you upload them to the website. We've been watching. And he said, me and my wife, we feel like it's time that we support your church. How much do you need to get by every week? He said, about $1,100. How much are you averaging right now? He said, we were right there. We're like $950, $500 a week coming your way right now. Dude, I started weeping, guys. For the next 8 months, I saw our church dig ourselves out of that hole and have an abundance of what God should do. Because that's how good God is. That's how great God is. Is that our back was against the wall. And right after I got off the phone, I put that song on right there. I just started worshiping in my house, thanking God for what He's done. Leah come through the door, and I'm just crying. She thought someone died. She comes through the door. I was just weeping because it was the first time really in my life where my faith and my back was against the wall. And I saw a God of miracles go to work on our behalf. Since then, I don't sweat it. We've had times in our 2 years where it's gotten kind of closing in. I mean, heck, 3 weeks ago, we just saw ourselves back to like $200 in our savings, but I wasn't sweating it. Because then that week, I was like, God's got this. A check for $3,000 came in the mail, took care of all our summer expenses. I'm going to tell you something. God is wanting our church to do something special in this community. He's wanting us to work together. He's wanting us to reach this community. All I can do is be faithful and obedient. All you can do in your life is pray first, be faithful and obedient. You see, like I like to tell people, obedience is our responsibility, the outcome is God's responsibility. If you would just obey, be faithful to who God is, and He will help you in any circumstance. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to finish up reading this passage right here in Hebrews chapter 10. I love this. In Hebrews chapter 10, can you bring that up for me real quick? The Hebrews are, we really don't know who that is, but he's talking about these circumstances, crises that are happening. And he's trying to reaffirm the people that are in crisis. And he says, look, I recall the former days when after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings. Come on, some of us have had a hard struggle in our sufferings. Sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. You ever been treated by people not the right way? It says, for you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better position and abiding one. Look at this. But it says, therefore, you've seen God do all that in your life. You've seen Him working on your behalf, and you know what He's done in the former days. So if you've seen Him do that before, do not throw away your confidence, because it has a great reward. I need to tell someone in here today, you need to stop throwing away your confidence and believe in a God who will give you the confidence in the crisis so that you can keep moving forward and pursuing the potential in your life. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what is promised. With everybody on their feet right now.